समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया?
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
आप समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
American President Donald Trump has once again lashed out at India, calling out what he thinks is some big offense: India's purchase of oil and military products from Russia. This even as Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, and Narendra Modi go into a power huddle at the SCO summit in China. What's the view from Washington? From the United States of America, we'll be talking to leading global analyst Ian Bremmer in just a moment. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo story. These images coming out of China today, the trio of Putin, Modi, and Xi Jinping, must be provoking some big sentiments in the White House. US-India relations are perhaps at an all-time nadir, and Modi and India are adjusting accordingly. The three leaders went into a power huddle that is sending a very clear message to Donald Trump after he slapped 50% tariffs on India, 25% of which are being called a penalty for purchasing oil from Russia. India's ambassador to Russia has made it clear that India will purchase oil from wherever it gets the best deal. In the meantime, the SCO summit also saw Pakistan's Field Marshal Asim Munir arrive at the SCO summit. Trump lately has been quite soft on Pakistan, raising eyebrows here in India. Trump once again has made unsubstantiated claims of how India is evidently ready to cut tariffs to next to nothing. This is not something that India has said, and like many of Trump's claims, they will not be believed in India till there is official or independent confirmation of them. But given the realignment that is taking place, given the kind of bizarre comments that seem to come from Trump aide Peter Navarro every single day, this time talking about quote-unquote Brahmins profiteering from the purchase of Russian oil, how do we look at the new axis that might be emerging to take on American hegemony, the axis of Russia, China, and India? India has had its own grave problems with China, particularly after the recent military conflict with Pakistan, where China was supporting Pakistan, but India is clearly adjusting with agility to the threats of a new world order. Let me introduce our newsmaker today. Ian Bremmer is with us live from New York. He's one of the world's leading global analysts. It's always good to see you, Ian. Did you ever imagine that the world order would be thrown topsy-turvy in the way that it has in the last few weeks? What is Trump's end goal? Does he even know himself?
Well, I mean, over 10 years ago, I wrote about the concept of a G0 world, a world where the United States did not want to be the global sheriff and provide collective security, a world where the US did not want to promote free trade and be the architect or even promote democracy all over the world. So obviously what we're seeing today is not a surprise to me. I wouldn't overstate it. I do believe that US-India relations are in a materially worse place right now. And frankly, they're one of the relationships that has most deteriorated in this second Trump term, especially because Modi relations with Trump personally were quite favorable during Trump's first term. But where I think I would be careful about exaggerating is how much one could speak of an axis between India, China, and Russia. Those three leaders have met together before, of course. It does not constitute anything like an axis. India is buying a lot of oil from Russia at a discount, and a lot of that oil is then finding its way on to Europe and even to Ukraine, frankly. But India's defense relationship with Russia is nothing like it was during the Cold War or even for the past 2 decades. And that's not going to change. I think it's actually quite positive for the world that the relationship between Modi and Xi Jinping is stabilizing to a degree, is regularizing to a degree. But these two countries remain adversaries and are generally fighting for influence around India's neighborhood. In almost every country, China's on the other side of India in terms of who's going to have more diplomatic, security, economic access. And that's not changing anytime soon. So we can and we should get into what's happening between the US and India, but I'd be very careful and cautious to look at these 3 men lined up together that have just met with a fair amount of bonhomie, but that does not an axis make.
I would actually agree with you, even though I'm the one who raised the question, and it's because there's such deep mistrust, I would say, between India and China, especially given China's role in the recent military conflict between India and Pakistan.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But guess what Indians are seeing? Indians always knew that
well,
Pakistan
we got the exciting headlines in, so that's good. We got to start with exciting headlines. I understand. I want to be a part of that. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for understanding. But here's the serious question. China and Pakistan nexus, well known in India.
Yeah.
America being soft on Pakistan in this way, not so well known. Not given the kind of noises we heard from Trump in his first term. Nobody is able to understand what's going on. Are these business interests, as is suggested on cryptocurrency, between Trump's family and Pakistan's crypto council?
Yeah.
Is this that Trump's former bodyguard leads the lobbying firm that Pakistan has hired? Is this because America at one point may have needed Pakistan for Iran? Is this because, above all, Pakistan said Trump should get a Nobel?
Yes.
What is going on?
Also important.
What's going on?
And look, I mean, Modi has a big ego, and Trump has perhaps an even bigger ego, though that's a high bar. It's a high bar. And these two men are not willing to defer to each other or give each other credit. And, you know, Trump has a number of things he wants to accomplish on the global stage, but he's been consistent that he wants to be the president that ends the wars. He's been consistent that he wants to win a Nobel Peace Prize and have it be deserved. And he has made honest efforts to try to help bring conflicts to a close. In some cases, he has succeeded at the margins, like with Armenia and Azerbaijan, like with Thailand and Cambodia, like with Rwanda and the DRC. In some, he has failed, like Israel, Gaza, and most notably Russia, Ukraine. And, you know, he believed that he had a positive role to play, that his administration, J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio and some of Marco's staffers, and I've heard this directly, spent a lot of time, primarily with Pakistan, to try to get to a ceasefire at a time that these two countries were fighting. And Modi, of course, Trump exaggerates about his role. Always. I ended the wars. This would be a disaster if it wasn't for me. World War III, all this stuff. But Modi has not been willing to give Trump any credit for his involvement in India, Pakistan. I understand the domestic political reasons why Modi is feeling that way, but the Indian economy is now going to take a hit of probably 0.5% of GDP. And a big part of that is because Modi's not willing to suck up to Trump in a way that almost every other world leader has been willing to. And so that's Modi's ego having a direct effect on the Indian economy. And, you know, look, Trump's ego has an effect on all sorts of things. Is it fair that other countries should have to defer to Trump's ego? It's not fair. It's just the United States is more powerful. So, I mean, that's kind of what's going on here.
So let me try and give you the view from India on this business of not giving Trump credit for Operation Sindoor.
Yeah.
You know, I remember the day Trump suddenly announced that he had supposedly mediated this ceasefire between India and Pakistan.
Yeah.
He made the announcement firstly before India could come out and make a statement. And I think that was seen by India as a kind of direct affront to India as a sovereign nation. Point one, you know, had he just maybe said...
Would not be the first time Trump has done something like that to a friend. Denmark,
Yes.
Panama, Canada. I mean, this is not news, right?
But by doing that, I think he made it impossible for India to even say, you know what, President Trump, we're so happy that you drilled some sense into the Pakistanis. We got a call from the Pakistani DGMO. We destroyed them with our air power, and we want to thank you for your role in making them see sense, because he jumped the gun. And he didn't allow India to set the terms of that announcement, which any proud nation would want to do. So I think that ship sailed then in terms of credit for Operation Sindoor.
I think that's fair, Barkha. It's fair. I'm just saying that there's a massive power imbalance here. And so there are consequences for the fact that you're going to stand on sovereignty. There have been a lot of other countries with leaders that have been willing to suck up massive indignities, far greater than what Modi had to deal with Trump on Pakistan. I mean, the Canadians have had to deal with Trump talking about annexing the entire country as a 51st state, right? I mean, Denmark has had to deal with Trump actively supporting taking by force, if necessary, Greenland, a part of Denmark. I mean, this goes. I'm not trying to justify in any way Trump's behavior, but I am saying that it's very clear why Trump is acting the way he is presently acting. He is frequently, he's an enormous narcissist, and leaders that have been successful with him mostly find ways to avoid antagonizing him. Modi navigated that successfully in his first term and unsuccessfully in the last few months. And that's the reality. I think that, Barkha, I think India has every right to be annoyed, upset, offended by the fact that Trump essentially wanted to play, the adult against the squabbling children who don't really matter to him. That Trump is the big guy, is the adult that fixes it. I get why the Indians would find that offensive, but again, Trump doesn't care. Trump has no interest in rule of law. He has no interest in previous promises. He has interest in the fact that he's the most powerful guy, and you're supposed to say how wonderful he is. He's never wrong about anything, right? Anything. It's never his fault. It's always someone else's fault. And in this case, he came out publicly and said he played a role. And Modi, little Modi, from this much less important, much less powerful country, had the audacity to say that Trump was lying, that Trump played no role. Well, how do you think that's going to go, right? Now, by the way, I'm not saying that this can't be fixed, because Trump is capricious and he can change his mind in a moment. And I think it is possible to get this relationship back on track, but we are not heading in that direction right now.
So guess what? There's been some suggestion that Modi and Trump should talk, but even the New York Times is now confirming a report first put out by a German newspaper that the White House tried to reach out to set up a call between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump, and our side, the Prime Minister's office declined. And the reason was that nobody trusts Trump to not distort the conversation, to be even halfway discreet. Trump doesn't understand the concept of a back channel. Trump doesn't understand the concept of an off-record conversation. And we're told that a 17th June conversation between Prime Minister Modi and Donald Trump was highly acrimonious on this issue of what role Trump thinks he played in the standoff between India and Pakistan. Now, given this, where do we go from here?
But Pakistan proactively said that they wanted to nominate Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize. Israel, Netanyahu, same thing. when he came to visit Trump. It would have been fairly easy for Modi to have ignored what Trump said about India, Pakistan, and instead said, look at all this great work you're doing all over the world in the cause for peace. I also believe you should get a Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, does it matter? Does it matter? I mean, of course, it's stupid, right? But it doesn't matter. I mean, if you ask me, compared to, sort of 50% tariffs from the United States against India, China's not seeing tariffs for the oil it buys. Brazil's not seeing tariffs for the oil it buys. Turkey is not seeing tariffs for the oil it buys. Why is India being singled out? Because Modi offended Trump's incredibly fragile ego directly. And so, I get it. And I think that it would be useful. The Chinese, many other leaders have found ways to meet with Trump and have conversations with Trump, even though the public announcements of those meetings, frequently the readouts are quite different between what you hear from the Americans and what you hear for those other countries. Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico has navigated regular conversations, sometimes on a weekly basis with Trump, and Modi's incapable of doing it right now. Like that doesn't seem like one of the most, Modi's supposed to be one of the strongest, smartest, most capable leaders in the world, and he's incapable of having a back channel conversation with Trump that Trump might say some different things about than Modi's going to say. Put on your big boy pants, I mean, come on. So,
but big boy pants
on the sidelines of. I think they should meet on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. That would be the most positive thing that could happen. But go ahead, Bark. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say that big boy pants does not reconcile with the Indian Prime Minister, any Indian Prime Minister. Right now, it doesn't matter if it's Modi or somebody else. Any Indian Prime Minister saying Trump deserves a Nobel. I mean, they would automatically be classified as a suck up to America. And I think what America doesn't get, I think a lot of America doesn't get, is that we are a country, we're still emerging from the history, our colonial history. There is this sense that the world, and particularly the West, doesn't get to tell us what to do and who to be. And I would argue that there is cross-party, cross-ideology sentimentality about that. And I think a lot of the West thinks, oh, if Canada can suck up, if so-and-so can suck up, why can't the Indians just say it? Because how the hell does a little flattery matter? Can you imagine how Modi would have been pilloried had he said, oh, Trump's a great guy, he deserves the Nobel, after Trump was making false claims from an Indian perspective of a role in India, Pakistan? It just doesn't square with politics. It doesn't square with our, hardwired sense of self as a nation.
All I'm saying is Modi has a long history of saying incredibly flattering things about President Trump, who lies through his teeth and exaggerates on a routine basis. This isn't new. So it was never a problem for Modi to normalize Trump and his behavior on the global stage, as long as it didn't involve India, Pakistan. Suddenly involves India, Pakistan, and now Modi has decided that he can no longer handle a private conversation with Trump. I mean, I don't know. That does. I think he could do more than that. But look, it's his country to lead, and he's the one that's prepared to take the hit from the United States, and he'll deal with the consequences. I'm just saying that there's not consistency in the way that Modi has handled Trump over the course of the last years. In the same way, but Trump's behavior has not changed. We've always known who he is, right? I mean, like, it's just like what is it, the scorpion and the frog, right? I mean, the frog is really surprised by this behavior. Like, no, you really shouldn't be. So I do think that there has been some effort. I saw Marco Rubio, Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, putting out, saying it's going to be India, sort of U.S. month, and he's going to say all these nice things about how India and the United States work together. I saw that Trump has appointed, or Marco has appointed, Sergio Gore as U.S. ambassador and special envoy for the region, who is very close to Trump, is very trusted, very respected. That's clearly meant to try to improve a channel between these two countries. But we have to understand that ultimately it doesn't matter what Rubio does. It doesn't matter what Vance does. Trump is the decider. And if he doesn't get to a better relationship with Modi, then we're not going to fix this tariff situation.
So India's response to Trump's constant complaints about the purchase of Russian oil, and he's just issued a new post on his Truth Social account, is to say, hey, hang on, even the Americans are still buying fertilizers, uranium from the Russians. Yes, India's taking crude oil, and as you said, Europe is buying that refined oil. Petroleum products are exempt from Trump's 50% tariff because even the Americans are buying some refined petroleum products from India. In the meantime, Europe has actually increased its intake of Russia liquefied natural gas. So there's that. And there's the fact that India is now Ukraine's largest diesel supplier, right? So I guess what I'm saying is Indians see this whole so-called penalty for purchasing Russian oil as grand hypocrisy.
I thought it was quite something when Peter Navarro, the senior advisor to Trump on trade in the White House, referred to the war as Modi's war, and the war in Ukraine. And I posted that. And I said, well, hey, as soon as India takes its troops out of Ukraine, we can end the war. You know, that's all it requires. So, I mean, obviously, a lot of the public statements here are objectively absurd. Trump is angry that he has tried to bring the war to an end, and legitimately has tried to bring the war to an end. A lot of pressure on the Ukrainians, a lot of carrots to the Russians. The Ukrainians have bent the knee. The Russians have given Trump nothing, and he's angry. He's embarrassed about it, and he's lashing out. There's been a 2-week deadline, and then like a 50-day deadline, and then another 2-week deadline, and no matter how many deadlines, none of it's working. And it is certainly true that India does not really care all that much about whether Putin is a war criminal, doesn't care really all that much about Russia engaging in an illegal war to take Ukrainian territory. India is economically interested in buying a lot of oil at a discount. And given India's position in the world, which is to try to maintain good relations with pretty much everybody, with the global South and with the US and with Japan and Europe, you name it, I'm not surprised that India takes that perspective. It is also true that there are other countries in the world, many other countries, that are buying lots from Russia, most of the global South, but also even the United States, not oil and gas, but the United States is buying uranium and fertilizer still today from Russia. And that's not necessary. I mean, if the Americans wanted to really cut off the Russians completely, they wouldn't sanction just India. They'd sanction China too. But unlike India, China's a lot more powerful. China has the willingness and capacity to cut the Americans off in terms of critical minerals. India's problem is that it doesn't have the ability to punch Trump in the face the way the Chinese do. And so as a consequence, China's tariffs from the US came off, and now the Americans are trying very hard to secure a summit with Xi Jinping and to build a deal with him. And the interest in doing so with India, notwithstanding the efforts by Vance and Rubio, are pretty limited.
So you're saying Trump wants to cut a deal with Xi Jinping?
He didn't want to cut a deal 6 months ago. Remember, he hit China a lot harder than he hit India on so-called Liberation Day on April 2nd. That's when the Chinese were facing effectively a trade embargo from the United States. But once the Chinese showed that they were capable of shutting down American industrial plants by cutting off the licenses for heavy, light, rare earths, and critical minerals, suddenly Trump was in Mar-a-Lago with CEOs coming in saying, you've got to do something or we're going to have massive spikes of unemployment. And Trump decided that he needed to back off because the Chinese indeed had the cards. The Indians do not. Now, India has a better relationship with Trump has more history with Trump, but Trump is showing that he doesn't care about that. That doesn't matter. Remember, before Trump became president, he was a real estate magnate, right? And what you know about people that trade in real estate is they're not building long-term relationships with clients. What they're doing is looking for the person that will give them the best deal on an individual transaction. Once you sell it, you move on, you work with somebody else. So Trump doesn't really think about geopolitics in terms of what has this guy done for me 10 years ago, right? What's the nature of the long-term treaty or the alliance that we've signed? Those things can be ripped up from Trump's perspective.
Yeah. Let me ask you in the end, though, you said that, India's got to decide how much of a hit it can take to India's economy. Of course, there's going to be a hit, but there's still a sense that because we're not a very export-driven economy, the damage can be contained. The GDP figures that are just out are at 7.8%, unexpectedly higher compared to last year, same period. What about the impact of Trump's tariffs on the Americans? I mean, is there some understanding that this could come back to bite the American people?
I mean, that is the question. Certainly, inflation has ticked up a little bit recently, core inflation, in part because these tariffs ultimately are being paid by a lot of American consumers. And that's something that should have an impact, at least at the margins, in midterm elections. But the Democrats have no leadership. Their popularity is dramatically lower than Trump's. And unless and until that changes, it's hard to imagine that Trump feels like he's under pressure. I do believe that long-term, countries like India and China can wait the Americans out. But it's a lot easier for China, again, in a stronger position and an authoritarian government, than it is for poorer India with a democracy. And, there's going to be a lot of cost while you're waiting. Look, we got to remember, Barkha, that the big geopolitical change over the last 30 years has been, number one, the rise of China, and number two, the weakening of American allies. Not the weakening of the United States, but the fact that so many of the other countries that are aligned with the United States haven't had productivity, haven't had growth, haven't spent on defense, haven't had technological improvements. And so Trump, looking at those countries, says, why am I doing so much? They should be doing a lot more. The Europeans, the Canadians, the Australians, South Korea, Japan. And, India is in an unusual place in that regard because India clearly is rising. But Trump is not the guy that is thinking about being a Kissinger. Trump is a guy thinking about how do I get the best deal for me right now. And in that regard, India has not played ball by his rules in the past few months.
So before we let you go, I just want to give you a sense of Indian sentiment from our audience stream. We have one of our viewers, Sharif, saying Pakistan would give Trump a St. Patrick's Day parade in Islamabad if they could to flatter him. India is not a supplicant or a lone beggar like Pakistan. India has self-respect.
I understand that sentiment. Again, I mean, look, I personally haven't gone in and met with Trump individually. Despite so many CEOs, so many leaders, so many billionaires, they've all gone and they've said how wonderful he is. And from my perspective, like if I'm honest, it's only going to anger him and it's going to cause, major ructions in my relationship with the US government. And if I lie and I'm a supplicant, then I've lost my self-respect and I'm not as effective as an individual analyst. So, look, I get the fact that there are not great decisions here. I mean, there's never been an American president that I've had a problem meeting with and speaking with individually before Trump, because he requires cult-like obeisance. You have to tell him how wonderful he is. So, I mean, I have seen, whether it's the NATO Secretary General or it's, the Mexican president, the Israeli prime minister, or the Pakistani chief of army, even Emmanuel Macron, who is, Emmanuel's very courageous in his private meetings with the Europeans, but then when he meets with Trump directly, he kisses as much ass as everybody else. And so I understand it's very hard to get this right. It's very hard. And I think that there is a degree of India, and Modi saying my self-respect is worth more than going and doing what Trump wants on the Nobel Peace Prize. But for your viewers that are taking some national pride out of that, I would just remind them that national pride has been found very recently, and that Modi had no problem going and saying what a wonderful leader Trump was, so respected and so strong, until there was a problem with Pakistan.
I will say he did get criticized in some quarters for investing too much personally in Trump in India. 1, 2, Trump didn't hurt India's interests. Now he is. He's hurting our he's being soft on Pakistan. He is trying to hyphenate India with Pakistan. Even on Sergio Gore, the ambassador that he's named, he's also said that Gore will be an envoy for all of South Asia, which Indians see as a kind of hyphenation with Pakistan.
I understand.
So it's easy to flatter somebody when they don't directly hurt your interests. Right now, I think India sees Trump.
Saying, look, I mean, Trump has never hurt my interests. Trump's only good for my interests. Political risk all over the world. Far more people want Eurasia Group. It would be very easy for me to go and say, "You're so amazing, Mr. Trump. You're so wonderful." Because what's he done to me? I haven't done that, and your leader has. But your leader runs a big country. So it's easier for me to not bother to do that and maintain my intellectual and analytic purity than it is for the prime minister of a country of 1.5 billion people. I accept that. But I do want us, because you're a friend, Barkha, I want us to have an honest conversation about this. And I think that there are a lot of leaders around the world that have been more than willing to go and kiss up to Trump, because they thought it was the easier thing to do. And that was true of Prime Minister Modi until recently. Understandable why it changed, but let's be honest about it.
So you don't think Trump is overly exercised about the images out of China when he sees Putin, Modi, and Xi together?
I'm sure he doesn't love it. I mean, there is long term. There are going to be consequences. There's going to be a lot of hedging away from the United States. You're going to have, different leaders doing different deals to try to change trade flows. I see, the Norwegians doing deals with other countries on military purchasing of billions of dollars, as opposed to with the United States. That's a direct cost of lack of trust in Trump. I see, the Canadians with a lot more students coming to their universities in the coming year than to the US, top international students. That's a cost. So I do believe that these images are going to hurt the United States, its soft power, long term, because the Americans are no longer a predictable or a reliable partner on the international stage. There's always been hypocrisy, but ultimately the U.S. did stand at the end of the day for rule of law most of the time, stood for these institutions most of the time. And that is not true today. And other countries around the world will do what they can to avoid a big fight with Trump for now. And Modi is an exception to that. Lula is an exception to that. Most countries have done that, but everyone is figuring out long term how they can have less exposure to a capricious and untrusted United States.
Absolutely. I think that is the bottom line. Ian Bremmer, always fun and interesting to have you with us. Thank you. I'll see you soon.
Good to see you, Barkha.
Good to see you.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.